All right. Well, we won't give up necessarily yet.
Yeah.
Matt,
Hi there.
the only people we're waiting for, Carla, but I'm not sure she's going to be able to attend. I have not heard officially.
Yeah.
Leah, Liam, that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good deal. Well, I'm guessing Sue may know where Liam is, right?
Nice.
Maybe not. Yeah, I have no idea where my daughters
I
are.
don't know.
And Carla's actually in school now, and this may not be the best time for her to meet, so we may or may not see her at all. I asked her to make an effort to attend, but
Here's Liam, right on time.
school is probably in the way. Okay, do we have everybody, or are we close?
Just Leah.
Leah, all right. You want to give her another minute or so? All right. Mhm. Tina, thanks for sending out Kyle's note.
You're very welcome.
And I'm not sure, I don't remember if you sent out the CEC notice or not, but
Just went out probably 10 minutes ago.
wonderful, thank you. I wasn't sure when Carla first forwarded that to us, if she forwarded that to everybody or asked us to send that out, but I'm glad you did, thanks. I'll mention that this afternoon. All right. Okay. Mhm. I think we'll get going at 3:34. How's that, Tina?
Fine with me, Matt, whatever
All
you
right.
call it.
I'll let the Verizon time add one more minute to the counter, and away we go. Mhm.
Everyone has to talk just a little bit faster then to make up for those 4 minutes.
Those 4 minutes, yeah. All right, Tina, I'm going to suggest we go ahead and get started since 3:34 is coming. Good deal. Well, once again, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call our 8th meeting to order. And I want to start with a welcome to any Bergman Associates in attendance, and also our featured guest speaker, Anna Lease, the Director of Monroe County Planning and Development, and also the Executive Director of MCIDC in Comida. Once again, I'm going to remind everyone that our recorded meetings are posted on the county website under the quick link, so don't hesitate to go and check out how that website is evolving, especially if you want to listen to one of our previous meetings. We have a set of February minutes, and I'm guessing that everyone's had a chance to glance at them. So if that's the case, let me ask if there are any enhancements. And if not, then I'll ask for a motion to approve and then a second, and we'll take a quick vote and away we go. Are there any proposed amendments to the February minutes? All right, if not, then may I have a motion to approve and then a second?
I can make the motion.
All right, good deal, John, thank you. Just need a second and away we go. We have a second, thank you. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thumbs up, good, okay, good, the ayes have it. Thank you. Boy, February seems like a long time ago. I'm hoping by the time we meet up in April, Mother Nature will be a whole lot kinder to us in terms of air temperature. Tina was kind enough to send a note that Carla had sent our way last week. There is a CEC, a Clean Energy Communities Seminar coming up. That's included in a separate email. The date is March 10th. You'll need to register in advance, but I'm going to encourage all committee members to take a look and decide if attendance makes sense for them and possibly anyone in their community. But you probably remember Haley Farrington briefed us on CEC last year before moving on in January. There is a replacement for Haley. I think his name is Rob Richardson, and he'll be hosting this first public event. So there is the CEC seminar. Take a look and decide if you are able to attend. That's coming up on March 10th in the evening, 6:30 p.m. We have actually received our first email from the outside world, and this came as a note from a Boston College student who I believe is class of 2021 this year. And he wanted to reach out to talk about the lack of municipally run waste services. Mike Garland and Michael Eulis and I have talked through this with Sue Hughes Smith, and we are going to generate a formal response to him from the county. I did send a quick note to him, thanking him for his interest in what we're doing on the Climate Action Committee, and encourage him to stay in touch. If anyone has any questions on the content of his message, there are actually a couple questions posed. By all means, let us know. But I'll ask Mike Garland maybe just to start to outline the beginning of a response. I'll chip in by saying in the town of Pittsford, the town government has never really ever wanted to be in the municipal waste removal business. We just never thought, while I was an elected official and even before me with Bill Carpenter, that we could add value and save residents money, given the size of the commitment and the equipment involved. But we have since allowed residents to voluntarily form refuse districts, and the town has acted as the broker and gotten bids from various waste haulers to service those waste districts. And the end result is that for the second year now, those neighborhoods which have themselves contained in refuse districts are being served by one hauler, not two or even three, and largely at a reduced price too, due to the volumetric discount the town is receiving by giving all of the refuse districts in the town of Pittsford to this one hauler. The good news is, as we all know, refuse trucks tend to be big, they tend to smell, they leak, they're noisy, they spew fumes, and generally the folks who service them aren't the quietest folks at 6 in the morning, I've noticed. They also do a number on streets, especially town roads, because they're so heavy. They tend to chew up and spit out the pavement. We're in a refuse district right now and have been for the past year. And the good news is instead of having 6 trucks come up and down Briar Patch and Briar Circle on Friday, which was always our refuse collection day, we only have 2 trucks, and they're one right after the other. We've got the waste truck followed by the recycling truck, and they're on and off the street in 5 minutes, and they're relatively quick, easy, and efficient, and not too loud. So that's a real plus for us. And on top of that, we're saving about 50% of what we used to pay, thanks to the volumetric or bulk discount that the town negotiated for us. We also decided to put that bill on the town tax bill for residents for ease. That also eliminates the need to pay Monroe County sales tax and town tax on refuse hauling, which could be many hundreds of dollars for a year. So I'll just offer that, and we can weave that type of response into an answer here to our senior Kyle. Mike Garland, Michael Eulison, Sue Hughes Smith, feel free to add your insight here.
And just Mike, before you jump in, I'll just mention Henrietta, just so you have another point of reference. They approached it a little differently, but the issues were the same. The noise from multiple trucks going up and down streets, and especially, and I saw Mike Garland shaking his head, the wear and tear on the residential streets. And the way they addressed it in Henrietta was to pass legislation by the town board that gave them the authority to regulate that. It was kind of loose as far as what they actually would do. It was more to kind of get the haulers to work something out before the town had to step in. And then by extension, the problem has subsided somewhat, not only because of that action, but because in that business, one of the haulers that does a lot of business in Henrietta, Casella, bought up several of the small ones. So now there's really only 2 major players in garbage collection. So it's just less trucks that are out there. So that's just another point of reference, and Mike, turn it over to you.
Sure, and I guess I will ask too, is Sue wants to comment at all before I speak?
Well, just that Kyle made a special point about organic waste getting out of the waste stream,
Yeah.
which is something that needs special attention. And I hope that we can put some guidelines in place to make that a reality in the coming couple of years. So,
Yeah, great. Yep, happy to just comment on how I expect we'll respond. And we often get emails, requests and questions like this from, thoughtful environmental stewards here in our community. And we always appreciate them. And we like to take the time to give them a thorough response since they took the time to reach out to us. So we've begun to outline a response. And I'm, as a former town DPW commish, I do appreciate refuse districts. I've not been involved in one, but I think they are a great idea. They may become an easy recommendation that we make as part of our phase 2 climate action plan, because we know if you look at the carbon footprint of that present operation, where it's entirely, in those areas where it's entirely subscription based, there aren't districts or there's not a dedicated municipal collection operation, that there's a number of disadvantages with just allowing trucks to operate or haulers operate throughout a community rather than just go through a competitive refuse district. But we can talk more about that. Nonetheless, so I expect the response will include certainly a reference to the climate action plan that's under development. Some of the items that we'll be looking at is both part phase 1 and phase 2, so that he's aware of that. The email obviously has been forwarded to environmental services, and so we'll do a quick reference to the solid waste, refuse, and recycling law. If he's having trouble sleeping at night, he can definitely break that out and read that. But it'll talk about the legislation, some historical perspective. We like to give people the kind of where we've been, where we are, where we're going snapshot, and that we don't have limitations. The county certainly through its law did not place limitations on subscription-based hauling within the county. As you know, the county does not participate in hauling, does not intend to participate in hauling at any point in time. We'll reference those refuse districts that were referenced already, and in the success that's been achieved in those communities. We'll talk about that for the student. We'll also talk about how there are municipalities like the city of Rochester, as well as some other villages that have their own collection operations there as well too. So I think we can give the student a well-rounded perspective on kind of where things are, what we'll be looking at, and acknowledge his legitimate concern as well. As he talks about organics, sort of the second phase in the response to, we'll be talking about how County Executive Bello, in his transition report, talked about leading the way on reducing food waste, with reduction being the operative word. And I'm sure Kate McCardle might have helped him craft some of that language there, inspire him to make that a high priority, which is great. We can talk about in the email, some of the perspective we shared when I had my conversation and discussion with Jeremy Moll relative to the 3 R's and recycling. Certainly, how source reduction is such an important part of food waste reduction because of the 20-time benefit in greenhouse gas reductions through reduction itself. So we'll talk about that. Also, point to the success of existing compost collection operations through Impact Earth. It is available, obviously, on a subscription basis. Reference the city's program where they're going to be studying a pilot area, as well as how we'll be looking at that too, as well as part of our climate action plan, and our expectation that Monroe County, will be studying that as well too, utilizing one of our engineers to start to look at what would composting look like in the community. So I think we've got a lot of material for a very thorough response, and certainly the entire committee will be shared in that response as well too.
Could I ask
I
a
hope
quick
that's
question
satisfactory. Yeah, sure.
before we move on, from you guys who know a lot more about refuse districts? The parameters of creating a refuse district, is that up to the individual municipality? Because I know like my neighborhood doesn't have one because the last person who tried to create it couldn't get over a certain threshold of community, neighborhood participation.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think that's governed too at the state level, because when we were forming our refuse district, we either needed to get half plus one of the neighbors in the refuse district we proposed to participate, in which case everybody participated, or we needed to get half of the assessed value in the refuse district in. So one or the other, I forget which one was which, because we used one for one initiative in Pittsford and one for the other. But yes, there is, I think, a state regulated process for securing approvals of residents. And I formed a refuse district in my own neighborhood. There are 16 homes, and given the fact that we were able to reduce the cost of residents by 50% on top of eliminating all that noise pollution and other odoriferous pollution, if you will, it's been a win-win for everybody.
Oh, yeah, so much sense. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the state does have some guidelines for how to go ahead and secure approval. And of course, we have to vote on this at town board. We actually set up a public hearing and listened to residents who had some questions and concerns. The waste hauler was there, and we actually voted those districts much like we would a sewer district in the
Right, because they become a special taxing district.
That's
And,
exactly right.
Yep.
Good deal.
Matt, can I just?
And
jump in
there's
as
a
well?
safety element to that as well too, having fewer trucks. And we've heard of some really
Yeah, definitely.
tragic accidents with garbage trucks.
Matt, can I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah, by
My
all means.
understanding is it doesn't need to be only a specific community district. You could do a townwide district if you wanted to as well.
I think you could. We started because we have 30,000 in Pittsford with individual districts. We allowed residents to basically join together and form districts geographically that made sense. And I think, originally the first year we had 5 districts, and I forget how many households, but probably well over 100. Yeah.
And to Pat's observation too, I recall Brighton, didn't they break the town up into 4 quadrants?
I don't know, but my question was loaded. It was to help get some information out there, because I do believe you can do it on a municipal scale, which creates economy of scale, but also greater challenges as well, which Matt was just referring to. But it is, again, a taxing district that you do have to go through the state process.
Yeah, exactly.
so.
And the town board has to set up the districts and approve them after a public hearing too. So there's plenty of visibility in the whole process. Good deal. All right. Any other thoughts? Michael, thanks for your response there. I imagine we'll get him a formal response next week.
Correct.
I'll let him know, of course, that's coming. So our first real public input, which is great. I'm glad that he's out there watching what we're doing. I just wanted to move on and ask Mike and Clem just to talk about CSC and the activity that's been ongoing since February. Once again, I'll shout out and provide kudos to the county for taking the CSC pledge, a 10-point pledge. So Monroe County now has become a registered climate smart community, which is definitely the first step toward eventual certification. So the questions that we on the committee have are essentially, what role can our committee play? What do you think the next steps are? I realize, we're moving forward and all that's good, but I was wondering if Mike and Clem could just give us a quick update as to where the whole CSC effort is, and possibly with that now, the CEC effort too. Thanks.
Clem is more involved in it than I am, so I'll defer to Clem, who is going to serve as our CSC coordinator. And our recommendation is that the advisory committee serve as the task force. I think it makes a lot of sense because there's really parallel efforts. We're already meeting. So I think we've got a good structure in place, and again, that will be confirmed by the administration. But at this point, I'll just defer to Clem if he wants to.
Yeah, good deal. Feel free to add whatever thoughts you have, Clem.
Oh, yeah, no, as Mike said, the first 2 actions that need to be undertaken, actually, they're the only 2 mandatory actions under the certification program, are an appointment of a CSC task force and appointment of a coordinator to help, put all of these actions together, I guess. So, Mike and I and others have had conversations, as he mentioned, with the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee already convened and already well versed in some of the elements that will need to be reviewed as part of this program. It makes sense for this body, at least in our minds, to be designated as the task force, so long as that's something that obviously you guys are willing to do and have the authority to do. And then, my role, again, helping with developing our understanding of the pieces that go along with the climate action plan, as well as the other sustainability elements. I'm very happy to kind of step into that role and continue to work with you guys on that. So,
Thanks. Yeah, we welcome that.
Sorry. In addition to that, just to kind of let everyone else know, while we've been kind of discussing how we were going to formulate that, I've been also reaching out to, or doing some research, and had an opportunity to reach out to others around the state, including I have a contact down in Tompkins County who was involved in the development of their climate action plans. So I'm trying to make connections with other communities who've kind of gone down this process. I don't know if we mentioned last month that obviously our goal would be to achieve the highest level certification that we can. According to the program right now, that is a silver level certification. And I believe there's 3 counties that have achieved that. One is Ulster County, which we heard from back in November, I believe. And then Tompkins County is one of those, is another silver certified county. So these are a good references for us to have, and any advice they can give as we go along this process is going to be helpful. The person who I connected with said that actually they've been working through this for a number of years now in Tompkins County. So they've learned a lot as they've gone along their process. So actually they can provide a lot of lessons learned as well, which I think will be very valuable. So whatever I learned from these kind of conversations that I feel will be interesting for the committee to hear, I'll be sure to pass those along.
Good deal. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, Tompkins is right in our backyard too, which is a plus. Yeah. Ulster is close, but Tompkins is even closer. Good deal. Any other questions for Clem or Mike before we move on into the agenda? So far, so good. Okay. Next up, we've got Joe and our consultants from Bergman. I'll ask Mike Garland and Michael Udelson to welcome them again, and we're going to talk to the emerging CAP with the team.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
Michael.
I'll just say, and then let Mike and then Joe speak, that I just noted that this update kind of just like the report Clem just gave us really speaks to the thing that I'm guessing is on people's minds of what are we as a committee going to be doing and what's our role going to be. And as you remember, last meeting, I believe it was, we agreed that it would be helpful to have a kind of a standing item on the agenda to get an update on the process, and to have us be able to have some rough timeline of the milestones, the deliverables, and the role our committee will play, knowing that those things are always subject to different things that affect and could alter the schedule. So Mike, before letting Joe talk, I'll just see if there's give you the opportunity to add anything you might want to.
Thanks, Michael. Really, at this point, I'll turn it over to Joe to give us the update.
Okay, here we go. Not a lot to add. I think the last I think we discussed was we were waiting to get the contract fully executed with Berkman Associates, our consultant. And by the way, I told them I didn't think it was necessary at this point to be on this call, but they definitely will be on the next call. Because since the time we've met last, we have had the contract executed. We fully kicked things off. We're in what's really called the data gathering mission, and in front of that, what we did was we put together the internal working group within the county itself. What that is, it's made up of some of the different departments here at the county that are probably or will be most closely tied into the Climate Action Plan Phase 1, which is focused on the county operations. So we just gathered that team, kind of did an introduction, and just let them know that there could be myself and some other of my DES counterparts that will be coming to them to get information. We've got most of it, within ourselves and our department, but we're going to need some help and input from these other departments. So they're well versed now with Bergman, the consultant, and Michael Baker, their sub, who really has a lot of the experience with the climate action plan itself. So that's the progress I wanted to really show at this point, that we got the internal working group, we got everybody at the county departments involved essentially, and Bergman's off and running this month as we speak. So I'll kind of end there and just let you know they're going to be on the call probably, well, for sure, for the April meeting, and April, May, June, because that's really where they're going to be digging their teeth into the climate action plan.
Yeah. Joe, before I open it to any questions from the group, I just wanted to ask you if you can refresh our memory, if there's any kind of timetable, something that we can at least form an impression of how long that process. You say the next 3 months they'll really be going along, but how much should we expect to hear, as you go from month to month, as far as the plan going along, or is it really a process that is more tends to be a thing of wait until the process is close to completion before you can really start to dissect it, present it, etc.?
No, that's a very good question. What I meant in those first 3 months, really, since they have to gather all their information, put it into their models, and get an idea of where our baseline is before they can really start looking at what alternatives are, really what our goals are. Not only are we gathering our own data within the county, but as Mike Garland brought up in the meeting, it was very important to say, hey, where are we with the state, or what are the state's guidelines? What are their expectations? Because we're looking at other counties, but we want to make sure we're in line also with the state on this process also. But to continue on with that, so that's what I meant by the first few months, because then we'll get into goals, and during that first 3 month time, they will be talking to you guys, because we want input from you guys also, just as experts or as people of concern. You can help that along as to where we're going with these, or are these really achievable goals? Are these where we want to go with it? So that will be the next phase. I'll say maybe late summer, early fall will be that whole goal setting type of period, and really the direction of where we're going with the internal, I say, I mean the Monroe County Operations Plan. And then we're looking at them putting a draft together in early October, November, early autumn, and then clearly having it finalized by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Joe?
Maybe I could just add a couple things, sure, Michael, to that too. And certainly any documents that we have to be able to review, like let's say the greenhouse gas inventory comes back, and it's something that we're going to be reviewing. We'll certainly share that with the group. If there are intermediate milestones, or maybe we have a 50% complete report that we're reviewing from a technical review, we'll certainly share that with the committee as well. So I think Joe's intent is that, as we get drafts, again, they'll probably be like a 90% draft as we get towards the end, but we certainly don't want to wait till then for your eyes to be on it for the first time.
That's a great point, Mike. Yeah. And if you can envision this action plan's got multiple chapters, chapter by chapter. Mike's exactly right. So I'll help. Well, I'll be involved in defining those tasks as they come along, and they will clearly be, we're transparent with this, and we want to get your input and your eyes on this as we go along. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. And I'd add to it too, Joe did a real nice job coordinating the internal working group. Pat Gooch is on that as a representative from planning, Tom Pollock from DOT, the deputy director, Doug French from Parks, deputy director from the airport, Bill Johnston, even our CFO, Bob Franklin, is part of that, the working group. And then from DES, obviously, we're going to be pulling a lot of folks in and out of it, but the mainstays in that will be, of course, Joe, myself, Jasmine Guevara, who's on with us today as well, too, and Clem, obviously. And when we need to bring in folks that have specialties, and then like Sean with the energy aggregation, or Bill Daly with green buildings. We'll be bringing them in and out of that, but they don't necessarily need to be at every meeting. But the people that I outlined, with the exception of like Sean and Bill, will be participating in our in the group that Joe's coordinating for an internal working group.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the group? Okay, well, if not, Joe, thank you very much for that update, and we look forward to hearing next month on what has changed. The next item on the agenda, we also had agreed should be a standing item, which would be a report from the legislators that are part of the group, knowing that sometimes, some months, the legislature doesn't really deal with much that might be of interest to this group. And I would say that might be, that is the case for this most recent month. But I did want to give just an update, because we have talked about the CPACE program, the open CPACE program, a few times. And you'll remember that was something that really would happen at basically no cost to the county, but takes authorization by the county legislature that would allow businesses, both not-for-profits and commercial businesses, to have access to reasonably rated loans for energy improvements. So we think it's a good thing. And it went to the administration for the review process that's necessary before it comes back. And I think just generally, I would say that process continues, and hopefully we would be hearing back on that pretty soon. I'll just, Mike Garland, you can nod at the head, confirm that, or just add anything you want to.
Oh, sure thing, Michael. Yep. That letter was definitely instrumental in having it referred back to DES, and we engaged, county law, county finance as well. Did a thorough review. We recommend proceeding with that. And thus far, it's received a favorable response from the administration. So stay tuned. I don't have any specific to report in terms of next steps, but it's moving in the right direction, and I'm grateful that we're seeing movement.
Yeah, I think that's a positive thing. And as it proceeds and comes back to the legislator, myself and my colleagues, Legislator Ansello, who I believe is on the call, and Legislator Boyce, will keep you up to date on that, and I'm sure we'll be supportive. And I'll just, I do see Legislator Ansello's box. If he has anything else he wants to add, he can speak up, and otherwise we will move on.
No, not really. I'm sure we'll be supporting this, though,
Okay,
when it comes up.
thank you so much. Okay, and Matt, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Michael. Next up on the agenda is our featured presentation by Annalise. She's going to talk about the IDA and solar project activity. I'll ask Mike Garland to go ahead and provide her a formal introduction, and away we go. Mike, thanks.
Well, thank you, Mike, and it's my pleasure to introduce one of my esteemed colleagues, Annalise, who I've had the pleasure of working with since she joined the county. And if you don't know Anna already, very enthusiastic, dynamic, and a great fit for the role in planning and economic development. Is doing a great job. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Anna.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Mike. I've been here now, it's just a little bit over a year. My first day on the job was February 10th, 2020. And a matter of weeks later, a lot of the priorities and goals that had been laid out for me by the county executive that I was working to implement were kind of flipped on their heads. So, of course, climate action is important. Is an important piece of economic development as we plan for the future and develop our infrastructure and our built environment for the future. We have to anticipate detrimental impacts of climate change. And another interesting and unique challenge that we're going to have here in Monroe County is climate migration. I'm sure we're all aware that being located here in the Great Lakes, basin and adjacent to Midwestern cities. We've been called out in publications nationally, internationally, as a quote unquote safe, climate safe community. That doesn't mean safety like, everything's going to be hunky-dory forever in Western New York. It just means that we're not going to be subject to the same kinds of nightmarish climate disasters and calamities that are more likely elsewhere in the United States. So as we look ahead towards the future and plan for the long term, we have to anticipate an influx potentially in population. And that's also true because we have access to such an abundance of fresh water supply. So planning and environmental planning is a huge piece of what we do. So I'm just going to start out by asking, I guess, raise your hand if do you know how IDAs work in the state of New York, or is that, okay, all right. So of course I wasn't surprised about Mike, but, and our legislator Udelson. So COMIDA it stands for the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency. And comida in Spanish also means food. So we run into that, that confusion every so often. There are IDAs located throughout the state of New York. Many counties just have one singular county IDA. Other counties have a county IDA and then municipal IDAs. Like I think there's a handful of them in Erie County. Here in Monroe, we've got COMIDA, and then the Village of Fairport has an industrial development agency. So, very small in scope. IDAs we were established in the early 70s by New York State statute, essentially to level the playing field at the county level to promote industrial development. This was right around that time when mobility was increasing. There was a lot more accessibility to other lower cost markets was on the upswing. You could hop on a commercial flight pretty easily. And so I believe, not speaking for the folks that determined this structure, that they wanted to come up with a creative solution to mitigate job loss and to encourage more investment. So what IDAs are statutorily empowered to do in New York State is to grant property tax abatements for industrial and commercial projects, and grant sales and use tax exemptions for those same projects, as well as grant mortgage recording tax exemptions for when you purchase a facility. So for instance, we are working with a optics company right now that is interested in purchasing a parcel of land, building a facility on that parcel of land in order to accommodate growth. And so we are working with the company to exempt them of the mortgage recording tax for the purchase of the land and abate the property tax on the improvement in assessed value to the land over a period of 10 years, and then exempt them of anything that they might purchase for the development that would be subject to sales tax, construction materials, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, et cetera. I'll just, as a footnote, I'll note that manufacturers in the state of New York you don't have to pay sales tax on manufacturing equipment. So if it's a manufacturing business, we're exempting them of sales tax on things that are not related to the manufacturing activities. So in exchange for those benefits, we must survey the company every single year to ensure that they are creating jobs in accordance with the agreement that we have in place at the outset of the project. In Monroe County, we require a 10%, for a pilot agreement, we require a 10% increase in jobs over the life of the project. Some counties, the numbers are much larger. Some counties don't have a requirement at all. That raises the ancillary issue of IDA law in New York State is written in a sufficiently vague manner that how our operations function in different communities and counties and parts of the state is very idiosyncratic. It's different. One unique thing about Comida, we have a 100% local labor policy. So when you come to us and you get a pilot and we grant you those incentives, which can be quite lucrative in comparison with the total CapEx, we would ask that all of your construction crews be sourced from the 10 county surrounding area. So Genesee, Livingston, Ontario, Orleans, Wayne, Monroe, Seneca, Yates, Wyoming, and Steuben. So it's a pretty wide geographic area, but that doesn't mean we don't run into issues where a business needs a waiver. For instance, if you're installing a specialty flooring or a specialty, we're dealing with a company that's putting in specialty prefab concrete panels that wouldn't be warranted by the manufacturer unless the manufacturer does the installation, then we can grant a waiver. But we're very proud of the fact that we have a 100% local labor policy. So with that, I'll just talk a little bit about renewable energy and the types of projects that have come to us recently and how we've been supporting those projects. I will note that in the past, it's not that we had a formal policy where we didn't support solar projects with pilot programs. According to my team here, because I really did some digging and I was like, so why weren't we getting solar projects? Why weren't they coming to us? And I think it was somewhat of like a tone and tenor of, leadership in the past, just not really rolling out the red carpet for these types of projects, but also the fact that at the state level, incentives have been, incentive programs have been created, grant programs to increase renewable energy production. And in my previous job, I was an economic developer. And I remember touring a site in Livingston County with a solar developer who told me that with these increased incentives and the amount of demand, particularly downstate, and the lack of wide open spaces downstate, those developers were looking more and more upstate more recently, looking for large parcels, flat parcels, no wetlands, where they can put the array and sell into the grid that serves larger populations elsewhere in New York State. And that was a learning opportunity for me. As you all probably know, solar projects aren't necessarily without without controversy. People complain of things like their eyesores and whatnot. We're agnostic about any of those issues. We want to see the capital investment in our community and we want to support what we can. So when early on in my tenure here, I was approached by a solar developer who wanted to sit down and have a meeting to talk about a couple of potential projects here that we're moving along that I'm going to talk to you about right now. And that was when I learned about just the fact we as a team had to come together and, we called up other IDAs in the state who had supported solar in the past and asked them, how did you do that? It was a learning curve for us. So these two projects came before our board. I should add, our board is appointed by the Monroe County Legislature, and that those board members approve projects or they deny projects, and they ask questions. We have a representative of our local labor community on the board as well, who helps keep us honest on that 100% local labor policy. So this past summer, 2020, it was the first time in our history that we supported 2 solar projects in Monroe County. The project name is Mendon Renewables, and the name of the business that is behind it, it's called Green Eagle Solar. And this was an $8 million development in the town of Mendon in the Honeoye Falls Lima School District. And the completion date actually is projected at March 31st. So I haven't been out that way, but I would imagine that they've got some crews out on the scene. like I said, it's an $8 million project, and that capital investment was offset by $2.1 million in state grant funds, according to the application that they provided to us. And we were able to provide them with a sales tax exemption on the equipment, as well as a mortgage recording tax exemption on the parcel, which amounted to $428,000 in incentives. However, the application where we ask, what are your existing jobs, what are your projected job creations, it's a big goose egg. There were no initial jobs and there won't be any jobs subsequently. So that's where these conversations can get kind of interesting, because you want to provide lucrative public economic development incentives in exchange for jobs, which create wealth, which grow our GDP, and et cetera, et cetera. But we also have to sort of flip the script and think about the environment and these types of projects being important to support our infrastructure and longevity and health of our power grid. So that was Mendon Renewables. Not long after that, Clarkson Renewables came to us, and this is the same company, Green Eagle Solar 5. It's like a VI. Clarkson Renewables is a development in the town of Clarkson, impacting the Brockport School District. Slated to be complete on May 31st of this year. This was an $8.9 million solar array development with $2.3 million in state grants. And we provided them with $516,000 in incentives in the form of sales tax exemption and mortgage recording tax exemption. The documents that I'm looking at right now are the several page long applications that businesses have to submit to us for us to consider them for incentives, and we bring it to our board. We charge a $350 fee when you come to us with the application. While I mentioned Green Eagle are the owners, that's just like sort of the shadow company. The developer of the two parcels is the company behind it is Nexamp. And I'll just read you a snippet from the Mendon Renewables application. Nexamp is proposing to develop a 5 megawatt ground-mounted solar energy project on privately owned property, which is currently being utilized for agricultural purposes. The total footprint will encompass 26 acres, located on a 169-acre parcel. And so Mendon Renewables under Nexamp is leasing that property from the landowner over an initial term of 20 years. And this is why, because it's a lease scenario, they didn't come to us looking for pilot or a pilot agreement. And it also notes here, and I'm not an expert in this space, but this project will operate as a community distributed generation project under the New York Sun program. CDG projects provide a significant benefit to the local community by enabling residents in the area to participate in a share of a local clean energy project and receive a discount on their electricity bills. Nexamp's program, Solarize My Bill, offers a 10% discount to any interested National Grid customer. There are no long-term contracts, no credit checks, and no sign-up fees. This project is expected to provide discounted credits to approximately 370 households, equal to an estimated savings of over $40,000 annually. And as I mentioned, the same company, Nexamp, is doing a very similar project in the town of Clarkson. This one is they'd be occupying 39 acres of an 82-acre parcel. And this would, again, is expected to provide discounted credits to approximately 370 households, saving $40,000 annually. So we're proud of these two projects. They set a strong precedent, and it was, first two solar projects since we were established in 1971. So I think that's really neat. And it also allowed us to sort of get our feet wet and understand how these projects work, how to converse with our board about them, how to converse with the community about them. I mentioned in both of those instances the names of the town and the school district, because those are the affected taxing jurisdictions. They have a say in these types of projects, particularly when a pilot agreement is put in place, because as you all well know, property tax revenue goes to the school district, the town or village, and then to the county, and et cetera, et cetera. And when you're abating it, you're taking that property off of the tax roll, which is called roll 1, and you're putting it on roll 8, which is a tax exempt parcel or tax exempt roll. And you are, all of the taxing jurisdictions ultimately, when these projects happen successfully, end up raising more revenue and property taxes. But there are some nuances, and there can be, like, we're dealing with some frustrations right now in one of our towns where a pilot agreement was terminated, and the school district is concerned about not receiving the pilot payments because the pilot payments were more than whatever the standard tax payments were on the land. So these things get really tricky, and we try to, we have wide open lanes of communication here. We try to share, and be as transparent as possible. I can't say that, I can't speak to anything that happened before 2020, but I can tell you that we've got a great team here, and we're really connected and open to talking to developers and stakeholders in the community. Are there any questions about these two projects? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for this presentation and information. Am I understanding, though, correctly that the two projects you referenced do not have pilot agreements?
They do not.
They're
No.
not payment in lieu of taxes agreement. And I understand that there's like inherent economic value in community members saving money. I get that. But isn't there additional like tax growth, tax revenue that's going to those municipalities that are hosting these projects as well? Like, can you speak to a little more of the economic benefit? Because all I heard, and maybe you said it and I missed it, was like the tax exemptions that we gave, and we're kind of interested in the other side, I think.
So in these two cases, the companies did not apply for real property tax abatements because they had already approached the municipalities and made arrangements with the municipalities under a different, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the page in the application. We didn't, on either of these projects, we didn't do a pilot.
Right.
And that was because it just didn't make financial sense for them, because they have to pay us 0.75% of, in exchange for receipt of the pilot benefits, they have to pay us as an agency 0.75%
Sure.
of the total capital expenditure.
So the community probably has that tax information, that the benefit, but you don't necessarily have it. Is that what you're?
No, I'm just saying that it didn't make financial sense for us to execute on a pilot agreement for them.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just wondering what they are paying in taxes to these communities that the communities wouldn't have otherwise seen as a result of hosting these projects.
That's a great question. It has to do with how the properties are assessed. And as I mentioned, in these two cases, you're looking at agricultural land, which is subject to unique, more favorable treatment as it pertains to property taxes.
Right.
And I don't know that in these two instances, an assessor may have said, okay, now that solar array is going up, the value of the property is going to go from here to here. But I can see if I can run that information down. I believe I have everybody's contact information. We work with a really excellent attorney who helps me navigate all of these things.
Sure.
And I know she'll have a really policy wonk legalese sort of answer that I can share. But for whatever reason, the shoe didn't fit on the pilot, but we did grant sales tax and mortgage reporting tax.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would just be curious to get more information on the economic benefit to the communities.
You bet.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. My other comment, I guess, is that it's a bit of a misnomer, the idea that we're constructing renewable energy up here to send downstate, because there is actually a restriction. There's not enough capacity for us to send that downstate. So just so everyone knows, and we don't keep sending this myth around and around and around, there's a problem with the lines, the distribution lines. There's congestion. And so we would need more lines in order to do that. And they don't currently exist. And secondly, our nuclear plant is scheduled to go offline in about 5 years. So we really need to be putting something large scale in place.
You're talking about Gannett?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Okay, so thank you for making that comment.
Sure.
I'm an economic developer by trade, and I don't pretend to know anything more than a
Oh, yeah, no,
passing
don't take it
buzzword
as a
about the
criticism
grid.
at all of you personally. It's a comment that goes around and around and around upstate, and it's just false.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, and before I close, I just wanted to also highlight to all of you that despite the economic downturn due to COVID, Comida has not seen a depletion in project activity. We're seeing actually an increase in project activity. And I have 3 significant recent examples of, we're starting to position ourselves to become sort of a hydrogen fuel cell technology innovation hub. And in 2020 alone, we had, and into 2021, early this year, Hyzon Motors is a hydrogen fuel cell developer going up in Honey Falls, $5 million project, 100 jobs, $481,000 in incentives. Plug Power, you may have read about, another hydrogen fuel cell innovator, completing that project in 2024, $5 million, 277 jobs, $950,000 in incentives. And then finally, Li-Cycle, Canadian fuel cell battery recycling company. And this is a phased project. Phase 1 was complete in November of 2020, $3 million, 41 jobs, $100,000 in incentives. And that's a hub and spoke proposed project. So they're going to be coming back to us this year with an even bigger project. So we believe that the talent that we produce here, the infrastructure that we have, the assets that were the legacy assets left behind by Eastman Kodak and other large corporations has set us up very nicely to become a draw to innovative clean tech companies. And that's all I have to talk about. And I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to chat with you. And I'm going to stay connected to you through Pat so that your insights and your guidance can help inform the work that I'm doing here with this team pertaining to economic development and planning in Monroe County.
So I have a question, maybe John does too, but I understand that you all are laser focused on economic development. Where is the opportunity for the discussion about what actually is sustainable before we decide that we're going to say become a hydrogen fuel cell hub? Like, who's deciding that based on and claiming that it's an environmental good, right? So where's there's a lot of intersectionality here, right? Like, we want to have economic development, but we don't want to go down false solutions. And is the IDA ever having or able to have consultation with other, entities, environmental experts in the area to influence whether they're deciding something is in line with, say, the climate action plan that we end up creating? Like, how does that intersect? How can we make that intersect?
I'm glad you said that. So the short answer to your question is no, there is no like one entity that's deciding that there's an intersection between what is sustainable and good for our environment and what is good economic development. That is the goal of this effort. And then working with Pat and the team here, we are updating for the first time since 1972, the countywide comprehensive plan. And that plan very clearly delineates this issue as it intersects with economic development. And it's going to take a razor sharp look at every policy, every program, every red cent, in our budget, and look at how, make recommendations as to how we should adjust our operations accordingly. In the interim, because that's going to be a long drawn out process, I am the executive director of the IDA. I can touch base with this group and work with this group when projects come along and we're taking a look at it and determining its viability and whether or not we want to bring it to the board and say, hey, can you talk about this with us? Help us understand so that we can ask the right questions. And tied to that also, we do require, seeker negative declarations on seekers. So there is that, formality involved in the work that we're doing. But I would love to be a resource to all of you, and I would love to use you all and your collective wisdom as a resource as well.
Great, that's great to hear.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And I'll have Pat share my contact information with you all as well.
Good deal.
Yeah, good job, Anna. Thank you.
Yeah. John, did you have a question for Anna?
I think Sue was just picking up on a comment I made about the plug power thing. Hydrogen is kind of it can go either way. If you're going to produce hydrogen from a coal generated electricity, it's probably not the best thing from a climate standpoint. The wire to wire efficiency of hydrogen is really not super great. But again, if it's being produced by hydropower and then it's replacing a diesel engine in a truck, for example, that might be a net win for the environment. But I think the extreme version of what Sue's talking about is if we found a seam of coal under Monroe County, I don't think we'd want to give money to somebody to dig it out.
No. No.
So I think that's just hydrogen is kind of, it doesn't lend itself. It could be good, it could be bad.
Yeah, to me, it largely depends on what the source of the hydrogen is. And there's a lot of technology where they're stripping the hydrogen off of natural gas, which means you're just going to keep continuing to frack gas. That's not really a sustainable or healthy solution. So
I think
I like to think about the entire, cycle. So thanks, Liam, for dropping a link in the chat for anyone who wants to explore some of the false solutions as the state is currently drafting the CLCPA details. New York Renews, was an environmental justice coalition, has a number of concerns with some proposals, including hydrogen. And so you might take a look at that resource. Thanks, Liam.
One of the concerns the IDA might want to consider is what happens to the flame and where does the flame go in the whole life cycle? For instance, if we all rode electric automobiles, what powered them with coal or oil fired power plants, we'd just be moving the flame from the engine in the internal combustion engine somewhere else, right? So I think to John's point, that's something we all need to stay on top of and maintain some awareness. I wanted to thank Anna for a terrific presentation. I had one quick question, actually two. Are there any other projects in the pipeline that may come to maturity over the next 6 months or so, Anna?
Yes, we've got a lot going on. Thinking about, there's one project again that will fall under this zero emission hydrogen fuel cell industry category that Greater Rochester Enterprise is working on, and that'll be coming to us in the next month or so. Right now in our queue, I have two major optics, photonics, and imaging company expansions. And of course, you may have seen the news about Amazon coming to Rochester. And the IDA has entertained two proposals, which we approved, and we've got another one coming down the pike, all part of sort of a broader warehousing and distribution ecosystem that they're establishing here. And huge investment, huge construction undertaking, lots of jobs, and of course, an associated economic or environmental impact. So those are a couple of things that I can share at this point in time. I'd also want to add to this that I mentioned earlier that IDA law is sufficiently vague so that we all kind of operate differently across the state. But we all have our own bylaws, and our bylaws delineate what we refer to as our COMETA's uniform tax exemption policy. The uniform tax exemption policy dictates all of the things that we can do, that we can offer, the structure, the framework of pilot agreements, and that requires sign off and buy-in from every single taxing jurisdiction in Monroe County. So our standard pilot is 10 years. Anything that goes longer than 10 years is considered a special pilot. We have to get approval from the taxing jurisdiction. There are some counties that have special pilot programs that are focused on certain industries or extend to, have different varying numbers of years. So we are convening our governance committee soon and initiating a dialogue around, taking a look at our UTEP. We haven't changed anything about it since 2012. Our county executive, Adam Bello, has been talking about making some, more forward-thinking changes to how we do business across the board as a county. And this is an important piece of that. So I think if this body has any recommendations, any thoughts about how we as an IDA can put some unique pilot structure together that would support the types of projects that you are favorable, that you favor, that you think would help further your ultimate goals, I would be open to all of those ideas. It's a little wonky, there's acronyms for everything in New York, but Google uniform tax exemption policy, New York State IDA or something, and you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about.
Probably no shortage of stuff out there. I did have one final quick question for you, Anna. Does the IDA levy requirements on developers during these discussions as to what the end of life considerations should be? For instance, would you look at the entire life cycle and ask the developer perhaps to come up with a reasonable plan for decommissioning hardware after, say, 10 years or 20 years, whatever the lifetime of the agreement is, especially if the equipment is used and quite possibly technically obsolete?
The answer to that question is no. As soon as our incentive is no longer active at the site, like after a 10-year pilot, for instance, we no longer have a relationship with the property or the owner. It's just throughout the life cycle of the incentive. But that's a good point, something I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, because solar fields have a lifetime, and eventually the technology will improve, and what we have now will most likely be obsolete. And they do have rare earth elements in them. They need to be decommissioned and disposed of properly. And I'm sure communities in which they reside will want them to be decommissioned in a way that's beneficial to the community. So that's just a long-term thought as you get more and more involved in this arena.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you.
And Matt, just so you know, most municipal solar codes do require a decommissioning plan that speaks to that and does require some sort of bond or other sort of financial guarantee to do that in the event that the developer is no longer in existence.
Yes, good point. Good point.
In contrast to most coal facilities, just saying.
One other comment. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Hey, just one other comment. It probably doesn't have the specificity that we would want in terms of solar, but the REDC spent years, I think 3 to 4 years, probably some of you on this call were involved developing sustainability standards for development. And I think that would be a great, Mike, I don't know if you were involved, you might've been involved, but I think that using that as a framework to not reinvent the wheel here and utilizing that for the county would be really helpful. And then just a year ago, there was some guidance and some language around environmental justice as well. So I think those are both pieces that we would want to pull from.
Thank you. I do recall that report, and that's a good reminder for me to give it another read. Thank you.
Good deal. Any other questions or comments for Anna? No, if not, then thank you once again, and no doubt we'll want to stay in touch, you with us and us with you as we move forward. So thank you again for the most informative presentation.
Thank you.
We have no formally scheduled public input today. Is there anything else to discuss? We are going to meet up again the first Thursday of April, which happens to be April 1st, also April Fool's Day, but we're still going to meet at 3:30. If not, then let me ask for a motion to adjourn and
so moved.
Second, and we'll move on. Okay.
Before I forget, Matt, is that spring break week? I should look at my.
It's a good question. My children are grown and out of school, so
It's not.
I believe
Is it?
Is it spring break, April 1st?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We want to consider quite possibly moving the date then for those with children in school? Yeah.
Meeting by Zoom. I defer to everybody.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't have any specific plans. I just put it out there in case, we had a vast majority of folks that were high talented out of town.
I wish. Nope, not
Yeah.
happening
If
here.
you do,
Yeah,
you
not
gotta
this
bring your
year, I don't
laptop
think.
with you, right?
Right,
If you hightail out of town, I'm not sure anything will be open where you go. That's the trouble.
right. We'll keep it as is.
Well, here it is, April 1st at 3:30, so an agenda will be forthcoming.
Well,
All right, well, let me
well-
thank everybody,
well-
especially, oh, I'm
hold
sorry, go
on.
ahead. Joe, did you want to say something? Please.
I'm
by all
just
means.
speaking because I know I'm going to want the consultants to be on board and I haven't talked to them. So I think we should push it off the following week.
I have no qualms with that.
That
would
gives
be
them,
April.
that gives them a little bit more time to, to present more information too.
Okay. Is
Thank
everyone
you.
in agreement? That's fine. I concur with Joe. I see a thumbs up from Sue. All right. So
Mike.
why don't we, I'm sorry?
Excuse me, Matt. We have a conflict, Mike. We have our other advisory committee on the 8th.
Oh, we do. Yes, we do.
I'm sorry.
Nope,
Could
good
we-
point.
All right. Is it possible to move the time maybe? I know 3:30 is work for everyone.
The
Or
other
we
meeting
could
starts at 3.
at 3, okay.
Yeah,
That goes for what, about an hour or so, hour and a half? Okay,
yeah, 2 probably.
all right,
About the same as this one. It's modeled the same.
okay.
We can keep it that, I don't want to mess up this guy. They'll work around it. Just like Susan said, it's Zoom, it's pretty easy to work with.
Well, let's see if there's another date that week that makes sense to, maybe Wednesday, 3:30 instead of Thursday, the 8th at 3:30, whatever you
I have a
think.
lab on Wednesdays.
It's gonna be,
Yeah.
Wednesdays are a nightmare. Stay away from my
Yeah.
Wednesdays.
It's
gonna be tough.
Let's,
Maybe Joe
yeah, I
could
say we
confirm that.
keep
So
it.
much for trying to
we-
be a solution. What do you,
Right.
what do you think, Mike Garland? Tell me.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined, since we have such a big group, let's keep it, maybe as an action, anyone who knows today that they're not going to be able to attend, send that
Yeah.
back to Tina. We can reassess.
Mhm.
If it looks like we're all going to Hawaii, okay, then maybe we'll defer. But if not, let's just plan on it.
All right.
Go
So
from
for
there.
now, we'll plan on April 1st, April Fool's Day at 3:30. And if we're going to lose too many people, we'll reassess. How's that?
Right.
Awesome.
All right, good. Thank you. I think I heard a motion to adjourn. Was that you, Sue? And how about a second?
I can second.
All right, Kate, thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate your time. Stay warm and well, and we'll link up again on April 1st.
Thank
Thank
you,
you again,
everyone.
Anna. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Bye now.